Hey everybody, and welcome to week 3 of class. This week we're going to be diving into some really important content, and we're going to be focusing in on two significant time periods. The one is really the decade of the 1930s, and specifically we're going to be looking at the Great Depression. Among other things, this week we're going to be looking at some of the central causes for the Great Depression. Now, typically what you find or hear is that the stock market crash of 1929 caused the Great Depression, and in many ways that's true, but in some ways it's not, because really what the stock market crash did was it set off the Great Depression. And really what we want to ask ourselves, and I try to address this in this week's lecture, is, what caused the market to crash to begin with? And a number of things we're going to look at, but one of them is an unequal distribution of wealth. You've got people buying stock on what we call margin, and I will be explaining in the lecture what that's about. You've got overproduction, and people are, as a result, being laid off, and there's just not enough money to be pumped into the economy. And ultimately what happens is you get this bubble, what we call a speculative bubble, that ultimately broke apart on October 29, 1929, known as Black Tuesday, and we get the Great Depression. Now, two presidents will oversee this time period, Herbert Hoover and Franklin Roosevelt, and we will be talking about each of their approaches. But one, Herbert Hoover, wanted to engage in a process called voluntarism, basically sort of a grassroots, you help your neighbor kind of thing, where Franklin Roosevelt was trying to implement government policies and regulations to try and deal with the situation. One of the things that you're going to find following the Great Depression is that once the Depression is over, the idea that the government would help you when trouble comes, that becomes a fairly normal thing. It's no longer will the government help you, it's how will the government help you. And the Great Depression helps to bring about that reality. The other thing that we're going to look at is World War II. Now, I'm not a military historian, and so I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at combat and looking at the specific battles, although I do provide, I believe it's a film, which covers some of the key battles, both within the European and the Pacific fronts. But mainly, as an Americanist, what we want to look at is what was the ramification of the war on the American home front. And specifically, we're going to be looking at the impact of the war on women, African Americans, Hispanics, as well as Japanese Americans. And that's going to round out this week's content. We're going to be looking at the Japanese internment, when over 120,000 Japanese Americans, 75,000 of which were put into concentration camps built within the United States. There was 10 of those camps. So we're going to be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at America's role with respects to the Holocaust. So we got a lot of really interesting content, but some depressing content as well this week. But we got all kinds of things going on, and I'm really excited about this week. I love this material, so I hope you will as well. As always, be sure to follow the directions for the discussion boards explicitly. Make sure you get each of the examples put in, that you're properly citing them. Obviously, if you're using a text, you want to provide the author's last name and the page number. If you're providing a lecture, provide the title of the lecture and the slide. And of course, the video, if you're using a video, please try to find the author or give some kind of authorial name and perhaps the name of the video as well. That way it's very clear what sources you're using. But as always, you have until Sunday at 11:59 to get that and the quiz in, so work on that. And as always, if you have questions, please feel free to contact me. Otherwise, as I leave you, go in peace, be warm and filled, may the force be with you, live long and prosper, and may the odds forever be in your favor. All right, guys, have a blessed week.